YNR recap: Adam's unexpected role in Sally's future and Diane's terrifying ordeal. The Young and the Restless may have just planted the seeds for two massive storylines that could completely change the lives of several Genoa City residents. One story revolves around Sally Spectra, Billy Abbott, and Adam Newman, while the other focuses on Diane Jenkins Abbott and the terrifying situation she finds herself trapped in. Let's start with the storyline that has fans talking. Even though Sally's due date is still months away, recent scenes suggest that something dramatic may already be in motion. During a tense confrontation, Billy Abbott and Adam Newman revisited one of the darkest chapters in their history. It was a conversation filled with pain, regret, and years of unresolved anger. For Billy, the loss of his daughter Delia remains an open wound that never truly healed. The tragic accident that took Delia's life forever changed him, and despite the years that have passed, he still holds Adam responsible. During their conversation, Adam once again expressed deep remorse. He admitted that he thinks about that terrible night constantly and carries the guilt every single day. It was a rare moment of vulnerability from Adam, but Billy wasn't interested in forgiveness. Instead, Billy made it crystal clear that nothing Adam could ever say would erase the pain. In Billy's eyes, Adam remains the man responsible for taking away his daughter. At first glance, the scene seemed like another emotional reminder of their complicated history. However, longtime viewers know that The Young and the Restless rarely revisits major events without a reason. Many fans believe the writers intentionally brought up Delia's death because they are preparing for a major future twist involving Sally and her unborn baby. The possibility becomes even more interesting when considering Adam's recent behavior. Ever since Sally became pregnant, Adam has shown an unusual level of interest in the pregnancy. While he isn't the baby's father, he shares a painful history with Sally. The two previously lost their daughter Ava, a tragedy that deeply affected both of them. That loss continues to haunt Adam. Although he tries to move forward, moments involving Sally's pregnancy often remind him of everything he lost. Some viewers have noticed that Adam seems emotionally invested in the baby in a way that goes beyond simple concern for Sally. Could this be setting up something much bigger? Imagine a situation where Sally unexpectedly goes into labor. Billy is nowhere to be found. A medical emergency unfolds. Time is running out. Panic fills the room. And then Adam becomes the only person available to help. It sounds like the kind of dramatic scenario that soap operas thrive on. If Sally finds herself in danger and Adam steps up to help deliver the baby, everything could change in an instant. Not only would Adam become part of one of the most important moments in the baby's life, but he could also save both Sally and the child during a critical situation. For Billy, that would create an emotional conflict unlike anything he's faced before. How does a man continue to hate someone who helped save his family? That question could become central to the storyline moving forward. Billy's anger toward Adam has defined their relationship for years. But if Adam becomes the reason Sally and the baby survive a traumatic birth, Billy may find himself questioning emotions he has carried for a very long time. Of course, forgiveness would not happen overnight. The pain surrounding Delia's death runs far too deep for that. Still, a life-saving act could begin a slow process that nobody thought was possible. It could become the first step toward ending one of Genoa City's longest-running feuds. Meanwhile, another terrifying story is unfolding elsewhere, and the situation involving Diane Jenkins Abbott is becoming more disturbing by the day. Diane remains trapped in a nightmare that she doesn't fully understand. As her isolation continues, her emotional state appears to be deteriorating. Confusion, fear, and uncertainty are beginning to overwhelm her, making it increasingly difficult to determine what is real and what is manipulation. And unfortunately, there are people around her who seem determined to make that confusion even worse. With every passing moment, Diane's situation becomes more dangerous. The question now is whether help will arrive before the damage becomes irreversible. And as we'll see next, Jack Abbott is preparing to take desperate action in his search to find Diane before it's too late. YNR recap: Jack's race against time as Diane's nightmare gets worse. As Diane Jenkins Abbott remains trapped in a frightening and increasingly confusing situation, the people who love her are beginning to realize that time may be running out. While Diane struggles to understand what is happening around her, Jack Abbott refuses to sit back and wait for answers. In fact, Jack is becoming more desperate than ever. The clues he has gathered so far have only confirmed one thing: Diane is not receiving the help that certain people claim she is getting. Instead, something much darker appears to be taking place behind closed doors. Recent developments have pointed directly toward Patty Williams, whose involvement in Diane's disappearance has become impossible to ignore. For a brief moment, Patty attempted to create the impression that Diane had suffered some sort of mental health crisis and had voluntarily entered treatment. The story might have sounded believable to outsiders, but Jack immediately sensed that something wasn't right. The explanation simply didn't fit the facts. The more Jack examined the situation, the more convinced he became that Diane was being manipulated rather than helped. That realization has pushed him into action. Instead of waiting for new information to arrive, Jack decides to gather the people closest to him and begin a coordinated effort to locate Diane. According to spoilers, Jack calls together trusted family members and allies in hopes of piecing together every clue available. Tracy Abbott is expected to be part of those discussions, bringing both emotional support and valuable perspective to the search. Kyle Abbott also becomes increasingly involved as concern for his mother continues to grow. Together, they begin asking difficult questions. Who is behind Diane's disappearance? Why was she taken? And perhaps most importantly, where is she being held? Unfortunately, finding answers will not be easy. Back at the mysterious location where Diane remains confined, her situation continues to deteriorate. Every day feels more frightening than the last. Cut off from the people she trusts, Diane is forced to rely on information provided by individuals whose motives remain highly questionable. That isolation is beginning to take a serious toll on her emotional well-being. Fear has slowly evolved into uncertainty. Uncertainty is turning into self-doubt. And self-doubt is exactly what her captors seem to want. One of the most troubling figures involved in this ordeal is Dr. Laurence Markham. From the moment he entered the story, there has been something unsettling about his behavior. Rather than helping Diane understand her situation, Markham appears focused on controlling the narrative surrounding it. He repeatedly insists that Diane experienced some form of psychological breakdown. He presents theories and explanations designed to make Diane question her own memories. He encourages her to doubt her perceptions. In other words, he appears to be engaging in a dangerous pattern of manipulation. The strategy is simple but effective. If Diane begins questioning herself, she becomes easier to control. If she stops trusting her own instincts, she becomes more dependent on the people around her. And if she eventually accepts their version of reality, escaping becomes far more difficult. That possibility is what makes the situation so alarming. Because even strong individuals can become vulnerable when isolated from everyone they trust. The longer Diane remains trapped, the greater the risk that she could start believing the lies being repeated around her. Meanwhile, another mystery is quietly developing in the background. Viewers have noticed several clues that suggest Patty may not be acting alone. In fact, some fans are beginning to wonder whether another familiar face could be connected to the entire scheme. That name is Martin Laurent. The speculation intensified after Diane noticed a collection of books connected to Alan Laurent. The presence of those books immediately raised questions. Was it simply a coincidence? Or was it a deliberate clue planted by the writers? Longtime viewers know that coincidences are rare in Genoa City. Every object, every conversation, and every detail often serves a larger purpose. That is why many fans believe Martin's name may soon become important. If Martin is involved, the situation could become even more dangerous than anyone initially imagined. Some theories suggest that Patty may have crossed paths with Martin during a stay at a treatment facility. Others believe the two may have developed a shared resentment toward members of the Abbott family. Whether those theories prove correct remains to be seen, but the possibility alone has created significant excitement among viewers. Adding another layer to the mystery is the fact that Patty's behavior has become increasingly unpredictable. At times, she appears convinced that she is helping Diane. At other moments, her actions seem driven by personal obsession. That unpredictability makes her extremely dangerous. Unlike a traditional villain who carefully plans every move, Patty often acts according to emotion. And emotional decisions can produce unexpected consequences. For Diane, that means every interaction carries risk. One wrong conversation could make her situation worse. One mistake could strengthen the grip her captors have over her. Meanwhile, Jack continues searching for any breakthrough that might lead him to Diane's location. The problem is that every hour matters. The longer Diane remains isolated, the more vulnerable she becomes. And somewhere deep down, Jack understands that. He knows Diane is scared. He knows she needs help. And he knows that if he doesn't find her soon, the emotional damage could become devastating. As the search intensifies, viewers are left wondering which side will gain the advantage first. Will Jack uncover the truth before it's too late? Will Diane find a way to resist the psychological pressure being placed on her? Or will Markham and Patty succeed in convincing her that the nightmare surrounding her is actually reality? One thing is certain. The battle for Diane's future is only beginning. And the next chapter may reveal secrets that nobody sees coming. Y&R Recap: Diane fights back as a darker truth begins to surface. As Diane Jenkins Abbott's nightmare continues, one thing becomes increasingly clear: the battle she is facing is no longer just physical. It has become psychological. Every day that Diane remains trapped, she is forced to fight a war inside her own mind. The people surrounding her continue repeating the same story. They insist that she suffered a breakdown. They claim she became confused. They suggest that her memories cannot be trusted. And they repeatedly encourage her to accept their version of events. For a while, Diane tried to resist. She held tightly to what she knew was true. She reminded herself of who she was and the life she had built with Jack and her family. But even the strongest people can begin to question themselves when they are isolated long enough. That is exactly what makes the situation so dangerous. Dr. Laurence Markham seems to understand this perfectly. Rather than using force, he relies on doubt. Every conversation feels carefully designed to weaken Diane's confidence. Whenever she questions her surroundings, Markham has an explanation. Whenever she challenges his story, he redirects the discussion. Whenever she expresses certainty, he introduces confusion. Slowly but deliberately, he attempts to make Diane dependent on his guidance. Yet despite everything he throws at her, Diane is not giving up. Deep inside, a part of her still knows something is wrong. A small voice continues telling her that none of this makes sense. And that voice may ultimately become her greatest weapon. Recently, Diane began noticing inconsistencies. Certain details don't match the story she has been told. Some events seem impossible. Certain explanations feel rehearsed rather than genuine. The more she thinks about these inconsistencies, the more suspicious she becomes. At first, those suspicions were difficult to trust. After all, when someone constantly tells you that your memory is unreliable, self-doubt becomes unavoidable. But now Diane is beginning to look at the situation differently. Instead of questioning herself, she is starting to question the people around her. That shift could change everything. Meanwhile, Patty Williams continues playing a major role in the unfolding drama. The problem is that nobody fully understands what Patty truly wants. At times she appears convinced that she is protecting Diane. Other times she seems obsessed with controlling her. There are moments when Patty acts almost compassionate. Then suddenly she becomes unpredictable again. This emotional instability makes her incredibly difficult to read. Even Diane struggles to determine whether Patty is an enemy, a misguided ally, or something in between. One moment Patty offers reassurance. The next moment she reinforces the same false narrative that Markham continues pushing. That contradiction raises an important question. Is Patty knowingly participating in the manipulation? Or is someone manipulating Patty as well? The answer could completely change how viewers interpret the storyline. As these questions continue building, another mystery grows larger in the background. The possibility of Martin Lawrence's involvement refuses to disappear. In fact, several recent clues have only fueled speculation. Fans continue discussing the strange presence of material connected to Alan Laurent. While some viewers believe these clues are merely distractions, others suspect they are pointing towards something much bigger. If Martin is involved, it would explain several unanswered questions. It could explain how such a complex operation was organized. It could explain why Diane remains trapped. And it could reveal that the conspiracy extends far beyond Patty and Markham. For now, however, concrete answers remain frustratingly out of reach. Jack Abbott is experiencing that frustration firsthand. Despite working tirelessly to locate Diane, every lead seems to create more questions. Each clue reveals another piece of the puzzle, but the complete picture remains hidden. Still, Jack refuses to stop searching. His determination grows stronger with every passing day. The thought of Diane suffering alone continues driving him forward. At the same time, Kyle Abbott is struggling with his own emotions. As concern for his mother increases, so does his anger. He wants answers. He wants accountability. Most importantly, he wants Diane home. The uncertainty surrounding her disappearance has placed enormous pressure on the entire family. Everyone feels helpless. Everyone feels frustrated. And everyone fears what might happen if Diane isn't found soon. Back inside her confinement, Diane reaches an important realization. Waiting for rescue may not be enough. If she wants to survive this ordeal, she may need to start helping herself. That realization sparks a change in her attitude. Instead of simply reacting to events around her, she begins observing more carefully. She listens more closely. She studies people's behavior. She pays attention to details she might have ignored before. Little by little, Diane starts collecting information. Some of those details seem insignificant at first. A strange comment. An unusual reaction. A contradiction in someone's story. But together, those details begin forming a pattern. And that pattern suggests there may be weaknesses in the plan surrounding her captivity. For the first time in a long while, Diane feels a small sense of hope. It isn't much. But it is enough. Enough to keep fighting. Enough to keep questioning. Enough to keep searching for an opportunity. Because deep down, Diane knows that the truth is still out there. No matter how many lies surround her, the truth hasn't disappeared. Someone is hiding it. Someone is protecting it. And sooner or later, that truth will come to light. The real question is what will happen when it does. Because if Diane uncovers the full story behind her captivity, the consequences could be explosive. Secrets could be exposed. Alliances could be shattered. And several lives in Genoa City could change forever. As the mystery deepens and tensions continue rising, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. The people responsible for Diane's nightmare may believe they are in control. But Diane is starting to fight back. And that could be the beginning of their biggest mistake. Why in our recap Jack gets closer to the truth while Adam faces an unexpected future. As multiple storylines continue building toward explosive turning points, several lives in Genoa City are on a collision course with destiny. For Diane Jenkins Abbott, the pressure continues to mount. For Jack Abbott, the search becomes more urgent. And for Adam Newman, a future he never expected may be approaching faster than anyone realizes. Let's begin with Jack. Despite the obstacles standing in his way, Jack refuses to give up on finding Diane. Every new clue strengthens his belief that she is alive and desperately needs help. The problem is that whoever orchestrated her disappearance has been extremely careful. Important information remains hidden. Witnesses are scarce. And every lead seems to end with more unanswered questions. Still, Jack continues pushing forward. He understands that time is becoming his greatest enemy. The longer Diane remains isolated, the greater the emotional and psychological damage she may suffer. That possibility weighs heavily on him. Friends and family members have noticed a change in Jack's behavior. His determination has become almost relentless. He barely allows himself time to rest. His focus remains fixed on one objective: bringing Diane home safely. Meanwhile, Kyle Abbott is becoming increasingly frustrated. Like his father, Kyle senses that something terrible is happening. However, the lack of concrete evidence makes the situation incredibly difficult. He wants action. He wants results. Most importantly, he wants answers. As emotions intensify, the Abbott family grows more united than ever. Everyone understands the stakes. Everyone knows that failure is not an option. Back at the location where Diane remains trapped, the psychological battle continues. However, something important has changed. Diane is no longer as vulnerable as she once was. While fear remains present, determination is beginning to replace hopelessness. Instead of accepting everything she is told, Diane has started challenging the narrative being forced upon her. She pays close attention to every conversation. She studies every inconsistency. She watches every reaction. And the more she observes, the more convinced she becomes that she is being manipulated. This growing awareness creates a dangerous situation for those holding her captive. Because once a victim begins recognizing the deception, maintaining control becomes much harder. Dr. Laurence Markham appears to sense this shift. His behavior becomes increasingly aggressive. The calm confidence he once displayed starts showing cracks. At times, frustration slips through. At other moments, he appears desperate to regain control of the situation. Those subtle changes do not go unnoticed by Diane. In fact, they only strengthen her suspicions. If Markham truly believed his own story, why would he need to work so hard to convince her? That question continues lingering in Diane's mind. Meanwhile, Patty Williams remains one of the biggest wildcards in the entire situation. Her behavior grows even more unpredictable. One moment she appears sympathetic toward Diane. The next moment she seems completely committed to the manipulation. This emotional inconsistency creates tension not only for Diane but potentially for Markham as well. Because unstable partners can become liabilities. If Patty starts questioning the plan or acting independently, everything could fall apart. That possibility may become increasingly important as the storyline moves forward. Elsewhere in Genoa City, another emotional storyline continues developing. Adam Newman finds himself unable to ignore his feelings regarding Sally Spectra's pregnancy. Although he tries to focus on his own life, memories of baby Ava continue haunting him. The loss changed him in ways few people fully understand. Every reminder of what could have been brings old emotions rushing back. And Sally's pregnancy is perhaps the biggest reminder of all. For Adam, watching Sally prepare for motherhood creates a complicated mixture of emotions. There is happiness for her. There is sadness for what they lost. And there is a lingering sense of unfinished grief. That emotional conflict has become impossible to ignore. Some viewers believe these feelings are setting the stage for a major turning point later in the year. The possibility becomes even more intriguing when considering Billy Abbott's role in the story. Billy's hatred toward Adam remains deeply rooted in the tragedy surrounding Delia. Years may have passed, but the pain remains just as powerful. Every interaction between the two men carries the weight of history. Every conversation reminds them of wounds that never fully healed. Yet soap operas often thrive on unexpected redemption stories. And that is why many fans continue discussing the possibility that Adam could eventually become involved in Sally's delivery. Imagine the emotional impact. Billy spends years viewing Adam as the source of unimaginable pain. Then suddenly, circumstances place Adam in a position where he must save Billy's family. It would be the ultimate emotional contradiction. A moment capable of changing everything. Of course, such a transformation would not erase the past. Nothing can undo what happened to Delia. Nothing can remove that heartbreak. However, people can change. Relationships can evolve. And sometimes life creates opportunities for healing where none seemed possible before. That is what makes this potential storyline so fascinating. It is not simply about a baby being born. It is about forgiveness. It is about redemption. It is about whether people can move beyond the worst moments of their lives. As these storylines continue moving forward, one thing becomes increasingly clear. Major revelations are approaching. Jack is getting closer to the truth. Diane is getting stronger. Markham's control is weakening. Patty's unpredictability is growing. And Adam may soon find himself facing a life-changing moment that nobody expected. The only question now is which secret will explode first. And when it does, Genoa City may never be the same again. YNR Recap: The endgame begins as lives change forever. As the tension reaches its highest point, The Young and the Restless appears to be preparing for some of the most emotional and dramatic moments viewers have seen in a long time. The storylines involving Diane Jenkins Abbott, Jack Abbott, Patty Williams, Dr. Laurence Markham, Adam Newman, Sally Spectra, and Billy Abbott are all moving toward critical turning points. And if recent developments are any indication, the consequences could reshape multiple relationships across Genoa City. Let's begin with Diane. After everything she has endured, Diane is no longer the frightened and confused woman who first found herself trapped in a nightmare she couldn't understand. The fear is still there. The uncertainty hasn't completely disappeared. But something much stronger has emerged. Determination. Throughout this ordeal, Diane has been pushed to her limits emotionally and psychologically. She has been isolated from her loved ones. She has been pressured to question her own memories. She has been repeatedly told that her perception of reality cannot be trusted. Yet despite all those efforts, Diane never completely surrendered. A part of her continued fighting. A part of her refused to accept the false reality being created around her. That inner strength may ultimately become the reason she survives. Meanwhile, Jack Abbott is closer than ever to uncovering the truth. The pieces of the puzzle are finally starting to fit together. Clues that once seemed unrelated now reveal a larger picture. Every conversation. Every suspicious action. Every inconsistency. They all point toward the same conclusion. Diane is not where she claims to be. She is not receiving the help others suggested. And she is in far greater danger than anyone initially realized. Jack's determination has never been stronger. He knows he cannot afford to wait any longer. The time for theories and speculation is ending. Now comes action. As Jack and his allies push forward, the possibility of a rescue grows stronger. But even if Diane is found, the emotional scars left behind may not disappear overnight. Trust has been damaged. Trauma has been created. And healing will take time. Still, bringing Diane home would represent a major victory. Not just for Jack. Not just for Kyle. But for the entire Abbott family. Of course, every hero needs an opponent. And for Diane, that opponent remains Dr. Laurence Markham. Throughout this entire situation, Markham has attempted to maintain control. He has manipulated information. He has distorted reality. And he has relied on psychological pressure rather than physical force. But control built on deception is fragile. The moment the truth begins emerging, everything starts falling apart. If Diane exposes his actions, Markham could find himself facing consequences he never anticipated. His carefully constructed narrative could collapse overnight. And once that happens, the people he manipulated may finally see him for who he truly is. Then there is Patty Williams. Perhaps the most unpredictable figure in the entire story. Patty's motivations have remained difficult to understand from the very beginning. At times she appeared convinced she was helping. At other times she seemed driven by obsession. That emotional instability created uncertainty for everyone around her, including her own allies. As the story approaches its climax, Patty may be forced to confront the consequences of her actions. The question is whether she will continue down a destructive path or finally recognize the damage she has helped create. That decision could determine her future. Elsewhere in Genoa City, another emotional journey continues unfolding. Adam Newman remains haunted by memories of the child he lost with Sally Spectra. No matter how much time passes, some losses never fully disappear. For Adam, Baby Ava remains one of those losses. The grief continues influencing his decisions. It continues affecting his emotions. And it continues shaping the way he views Sally's current pregnancy. Many viewers believe this storyline is building towards something significant. Perhaps even life-changing. The possibility that Adam could play a role in Sally's future remains one of the most talked about theories among fans. Imagine this scenario. An unexpected emergency. A sudden labor. A dangerous situation where every second matters. And Adam becomes the one person capable of helping. It would be dramatic. It would be emotional. And it would completely transform the dynamic between Adam and Billy. For years, Billy has carried anger toward Adam because of the tragedy involving Delia. That pain has influenced nearly every interaction between them. Yet life has a way of creating impossible situations. Situations that force people to reconsider old beliefs. If Adam helps save Sally and her baby, Billy could find himself facing an emotional conflict unlike anything he has experienced before. The man he blames for one devastating loss could become the man responsible for preventing another. That irony would be impossible to ignore. Would Billy suddenly forgive Adam? Probably not. Some wounds run too deep. Some pain never completely fades. But gratitude and hatred can sometimes exist side by side. And perhaps that would be the first step towards something neither man ever expected. Understanding. Not friendship. Not complete forgiveness. But understanding. As these stories continue moving forward, one central theme connects them all. Hope. For Diane, hope means finding freedom and returning to the people she loves. For Jack, hope means rescuing his wife before it's too late. For Sally, hope means welcoming a healthy child into the world. For Adam, hope means finding purpose after devastating loss. And for Billy, hope may mean finally discovering a path beyond years of anger. The road ahead will not be easy. More secrets will be revealed. More confrontations will occur. And more emotional moments are almost certainly on the horizon. But one thing seems increasingly clear. The Young and the Restless is setting the stage for major transformations. Lives will change. Relationships will evolve. And when the dust finally settles, Genoa City may look very different than it does today. Until then, viewers will be watching closely, waiting to see which prediction becomes reality and which shocking twist changes everything.